What you're about to hear will change the way you think about death, history, and the thin line between our world and the next. This is not just another ghost story. This is the true, documented history of America's most haunted vessel. Before we begin this journey into darkness, I need you to do something. Right now, wherever you're listening to this, whether you're driving, working, or lying in bed, I want you to hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to experience is unlike anything else on this platform. And if you've ever wondered whether ghosts are real, leave a comment right now with just one word. Believe if you think they exist, or skeptic if you don't. By the end of this story, we'll see if your answer changes. In the harbor of Long Beach, California, sits a monument to luxury, war, and death. At 1,019 feet long and weighing 81,000 tons, she was once the fastest, most elegant ocean liner on Earth. But today, the Queen Mary carries a different kind of passenger, the kind that never checks out. They call her the most haunted ship in America. Over 150 spirits are said to wander her decks, trapped between worlds, unable to complete their final voyage. Tonight, we're about to discover why some souls refuse to disembark. This is the complete, untold story of the Queen Mary, from her cursed construction to her blood-soaked wartime service, from luxury to horror, from life to eternal death. But I'm warning you now, once you know the truth about what happened aboard this ship, you may never look at the ocean the same way again. So, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare for a journey that spans nearly a century of secrets, death, and supernatural terror. This is the Queen Mary. Our story begins in 1930, in the shipyards of Clydebank, Scotland. John Brown and Company started construction on what they called Hull Number 534, a ship destined to become the most famous ocean liner in history. But fate intervened. The Great Depression struck, and construction halted for 2 years. The massive hull sat silent in the Scottish fog, like a sleeping giant waiting to be awakened. Workers whispered that the ship was cursed from the beginning, destined for tragedy. The curse seemed real when, on June 5, 1934, construction worker Malcolm Aitken fell from the scaffolding surrounding the ship. He plummeted to his death, becoming the Queen Mary's first victim before she even touched water. His blood stained the Scottish soil, and some say his spirit was the first to board the ship. On September 26, 1934, the ship was launched. King George V chose her name, though legend tells a different story. Cunard directors wanted to name her Queen Victoria, following their tradition of ships ending in IA. When they told the king they wished to name the ship after England's greatest queen, he reportedly smiled and said, "My wife will be delighted that you're naming the ship after her." And so she became the Queen Mary, named for Queen Mary of Teck, wife of King George V. But on that launch day, something chilling happened that would prove prophetic. Lady Mabel Fortescue Harrison, a prominent English psychic, was present at the launch. As the massive ship slid into the water, she turned pale and made a startling prediction. The Queen Mary will know her greatest fame and popularity when she never sails another mile or carries another fare-paying passenger. Little did anyone know, this prediction would come true in the most haunting way possible. On May 27, 1936, the Queen Mary embarked on her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York. She was a floating palace, over 200 feet longer than the Titanic, crafted from more than 50 different types of wood from around the globe. Her Art Deco interiors gleamed with luxury that attracted the world's elite. Winston Churchill sailed aboard her. Hollywood legends like Clark Gable, Fred Astaire, and Elizabeth Taylor graced her decks. She was nicknamed the Ship of Beautiful Woods because of her magnificent wooden interiors. But beauty, as we'll learn, can mask darkness. In August 1936, just months after her maiden voyage, the Queen Mary captured the Blue Riband, the prize for the fastest Atlantic crossing. She averaged 30.14 knots, a speed that would later save thousands of lives and doom hundreds of others. But even in these golden years, death stalked the Queen Mary's corridors. On June 8, 1936, during her return voyage from that triumphant maiden crossing, crew member Arthur John Francis Golding suffered a fractured skull and died. He was young, full of life, excited to be working aboard the world's most prestigious ship. His death was the first of many that would follow. Passengers reported strange occurrences even then. Footsteps in empty corridors, doors opening and closing by themselves, the elegant Queen's Salon piano playing soft melodies when no one was near. Staff dismissed these as the normal sounds of a large ship at sea. They had no idea they were witnessing the birth of one of history's most haunted vessels. For 3 years, the Queen Mary dominated the Atlantic, carrying over 200,000 passengers in luxury and style. But in September 1939, everything changed. War clouds gathered over Europe, and the Queen Mary's golden age was about to end in blood and terror. On August 28, 1939, the Queen Mary departed Southampton for what would be her final peacetime voyage. Desperate families fleeing Europe packed her decks. When she arrived in New York on September 3rd, war had been declared between Britain and Germany. For 6 months, she sat idle in New York Harbor, like a caged beast waiting to be unleashed. Then came the order that would transform her forever. Paint the ship gray. Strip away the luxury. Turn the floating palace into a weapon of war. The transformation was brutal. 6 miles of elegant carpet were ripped up. 220 cases of fine china, crystal, and silver were packed away. Priceless paintings and tapestries disappeared into storage. The swimming pools were drained. The grand ballrooms became barracks. In their place came tiered wooden bunks, stacked 3 high. The Queen Mary's capacity increased from 2,140 passengers to over 15,000 troops. Men slept in shifts. The air grew thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and diesel fuel. And then she was painted, battleship gray from bow to stern. Combined with her incredible speed of 28.5 knots, she became nearly invisible to enemy submarines. The world's most beautiful ship had become the Gray Ghost. Adolf Hitler knew the threat she posed. He offered 1 million Reichsmarks and Germany's highest military honor to any U-boat captain who could sink either the Queen Mary or her sister ship, Queen Elizabeth. But the Gray Ghost was uncatchable. She zigzagged across the Atlantic at breakneck speed, carrying Allied troops to victory. On one voyage in 1943, she transported a record-breaking 16,683 people, the most humans ever carried on a single vessel. But with that many souls aboard, tragedy was inevitable. October 2nd, 1942. A day that would stain the Queen Mary's hull with blood and her decks with restless spirits. She was carrying 15,000 American troops across the Atlantic when destiny met her off the Irish coast. HMS Kurakoa was her escort, a light cruiser with 338 souls aboard. She was designed to protect the Gray Ghost from German submarines lurking beneath the dark Atlantic waters. But on that foggy afternoon, the protector would become the victim. Captain Illingworth of the Queen Mary was following standard wartime protocol: never stop, never slow down, no matter what happens. The ship's survival depended on speed, but Captain Boatwood of the Kurakoa was operating under different assumptions. At 2:04 p.m., both captains realized they were on a collision course. Each believed the other would take evasive action. Neither did. The Queen Mary, 20 times larger than the cruiser, sliced through HMS Kurakoa like a knife through butter. The impact split the smaller ship in two, with a 100-meter gap of ocean between the bow and stern sections. Alfred Johnson, a 22-year-old crewman aboard the Queen Mary, watched in horror. The Queen Mary sliced the cruiser in two like a piece of butter. I saw sailors thrown into the air like falling autumn leaves. The stern section of HMS Kurakoa sank immediately, taking many men trapped behind watertight doors to their deaths. The bow followed minutes later. 338 sailors were thrown into the freezing Atlantic waters. But the Queen Mary couldn't stop. Orders were orders. She continued her zigzag course, leaving the drowning men behind. Of the 338 aboard HMS Kurakoa, only 99 survived. 239 souls perished in the icy waters, and many believe they followed the gray ghost to her new home. From that day forward, crew members reported strange sightings. Wet footprints appeared on decks with no explanation. Voices called out in the night. British accents, cries for help that echoed through empty corridors. The Queen Mary had become more than a troop ship. She had become a collector of souls. When World War II ended, the Queen Mary had transported over 800,000 Allied troops to victory. She was a hero ship, painted back to her original colors and returned to luxury service. But the war had changed her forever. The elegant staterooms were restored, the fine dining rooms reopened, but something dark lingered in her steel bones. Passengers began reporting unexplained phenomena. In Stateroom B, 340, a room created by combining 3 third-class cabins, guests experienced terrifying encounters. In 1948, British author Walter J. Adamson died in room B340 under mysterious circumstances. His cause of death was never officially recorded, but after his passing, the room became a hotspot for paranormal activity. Guests reported being awakened by invisible hands pulling off their bed sheets. Faucets turned on by themselves. Bathroom doors slammed shut. But B340 wasn't the only place where the dead walked. In the first-class swimming pool, now drained and empty, staff and visitors reported the sounds of children laughing and splashing in water that no longer existed. They say a little girl named Jackie haunts the pool area. Legend claims she drowned there during the ship's sailing days in the 1940s, though no official record of such a drowning exists. Witnesses describe seeing wet footprints around the empty pool, hearing her giggles echo through the tiled chambers. In the Queen's Salon, that elegant room where the wealthy once danced to live orchestras, staff reported seeing a beautiful woman in a white evening gown. She appears alone, dancing to music only she can hear, her ethereal form gliding across the polished floor before vanishing into shadow. The 1950s and 60s brought jet travel, and the Queen Mary's passenger business declined, but the hauntings increased. In 1949, Senior Second Officer W.E. Stark died after accidentally drinking carbon tetrachloride, mistaking the toxic cleaning fluid for gin. His spirit joined the growing company of the dead aboard the ship. July 10, 1966. The Queen Mary was nearing the end of her ocean-going career, but death had one more appointment to keep. During a routine safety drill at 3:55 a.m., 18-year-old crew member John Pedder was working in the engine room when tragedy struck. Watertight door 13, a massive steel barrier designed to save the ship in emergencies, became a death trap. As the drill commenced, the door began to close. Pedder, tending to the bilge pump, didn't hear the warning signals over the engine noise. The 13-ton door crushed John Pedder against the bulkhead. When fellow crew members found him and released the door, there was little visible injury, just blood trickling from his nose. But inside, his young body was broken. He died either at the scene or shortly after in the ship's hospital. John Pedder had been aboard the Queen Mary for only a few months. He was excited about his job, proud to work on the world's most famous ship. But Door 13 had other plans. Within days of his death, crew members reported seeing John's ghost in the engine room. He appears as a young man in overalls, still carrying his work tools. Witnesses say he asks about his wrench or whistles to alert others of his presence before fading away. Even today, visitors to the Queen Mary report encounters with John Pedder's spirit near the site where Door 13 once stood. 1 year later, on December 9, 1967, the Queen Mary made her final voyage, arriving in Long Beach, California. Fittingly, her last transatlantic departure had been on Halloween night, October 31st. She was too large to pass through the Panama Canal, so she sailed around Cape Horn, her longest peacetime journey of 14,500 miles. But even on this final voyage, death would not be denied. Crew member Leonard Horsberg developed heat stroke as the ship passed the coast of Rio de Janeiro. He suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and died, becoming the Queen Mary's last victim during her sailing years. Her arrival in Long Beach was spectacular. Thousands lined the harbor, boats of every size formed an armada of welcome, and helicopters circled overhead. The Queen Mary had found her final berth, but Lady Fortescue Harrison's prophecy was about to come true in ways no one could imagine. The conversion from ocean liner to floating hotel required massive surgery. Entire sections were gutted. The boiler rooms were stripped bare. The ship's fuel tanks were filled with mud to maintain stability. It was like performing an autopsy on a living creature. When the Queen Mary reopened as a hotel in 1971, something had changed. The spirits that had been dormant during the conversion work awakened with a vengeance. It was as if disturbing the ship's structure had unleashed something that had been contained. In the 1980s, members of the Orange County Society of Psychics conducted seances aboard the ship. What they discovered shocked even experienced paranormal investigators. They estimated that up to 150 different spirits inhabit the Queen Mary, souls from every era of her existence. Room B340 became so active that the hotel eventually sealed it off from guests for 30 years. Visitors reported being awakened by invisible entities pulling off their blankets, cold spots that moved around the room, and the sound of someone pacing back and forth all night long. The first-class swimming pool, empty since the 1960s, became a playground for child spirits. Security guards reported hearing children's laughter echoing from the pool deck at 3 a.m. Some claimed to see wet footprints leading from the pool to the changing rooms, though the pool had been dry for decades. The engine room, site of John Pedder's tragic death, became a hotspot for paranormal investigators. Equipment malfunctioned regularly. Cameras drained their batteries within minutes. And always there were reports of a young man in overalls still trying to finish his work. In the Queen's salon, the lady in white continued her eternal dance. Staff members would arrive for work to find chairs mysteriously rearranged, as if someone had been hosting a party for invisible guests. The piano sometimes played by itself, always the same melancholy waltz from the 1930s. As technology advanced, so did the evidence of paranormal activity. Digital cameras captured orbs of light floating through corridors. Electronic voice phenomena recordings picked up voices speaking in accents from different eras. Some British, some American, some in languages that couldn't be identified. Television shows began investigating the Queen Mary. Ghost Adventures, Most Haunted, and The Dead Files all documented unexplained phenomena. During one investigation, paranormal researcher Zach Bagans captured footage of what appeared to be John Petter's spirit near the site of Door 13. Modern hotel guests report experiences that defy explanation. Phones ring at 3 a.m. with no one on the other end. Elevators stop at floors where no one pushed the button. In the restaurant, waiters find tables set for dinner in rooms that were empty when they left. YouTube paranormal investigators have flocked to the ship. Jake Weber's 2023 overnight investigation garnered millions of views. Faze Rugg spent a terrifying night in the reopened room B340. Each video adds to the legend, bringing new witnesses to the Queen Mary's supernatural activity. The ship's metal construction may contribute to its paranormal activity. Paranormal researchers theorize that steel can conduct and amplify spiritual energy, creating perfect conditions for hauntings. The Queen Mary's enclosed spaces and long corridors act like echo chambers for events from the past. Some investigators believe in the stone tape theory, that traumatic events can become imprinted on a location, replaying like a recording when conditions are right. If this is true, then the Queen Mary, with her history of luxury, war, and death, would be one of the most powerfully haunted places on Earth. Today, the Queen Mary sits permanently moored in Long Beach Harbor, but in the spirit world she may still be sailing. Psychic investigators report that some ghosts aboard the ship don't realize they're dead. They're still living in their own time periods, unaware that their voyage ended decades ago. The most active areas remain the same. Room B340, where Walter Adamson died and unknown others suffered. The first-class swimming pool, where children's spirits play in water that exists only in memory. The Queen's Salon, where the lady in white dances to music from a bygone era. And the engine room, where John Petter continues his eternal shift. But new spirits continue to join the ship's ghostly crew. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Queen Mary was closed for repairs. When she reopened, staff reported increased paranormal activity, as if the spirits had been disturbed by the construction work once again. The Queen Mary has been home to an estimated 50 million visitors since arriving in Long Beach, far more than the 2.2 million passengers she carried during her sailing years. Lady Fortescue Harrison's prophecy has proven true. She found her greatest fame when she never sailed another mile. The ship now offers multiple paranormal tours. The Haunted Encounters Tour takes visitors through the most active areas. The Paranormal Ship Walk provides after-hours access to hidden sections. And for the truly brave, overnight investigations allow guests to experience the Queen Mary's supernatural activity firsthand. Room B340 has been reopened to guests, now marketed as a paranormal package, complete with Ouija board and EMF detector. For those who dare to spend the night, reports continue. Bed sheets pulled off sleeping guests, faucets turning on at 3 a.m., and the persistent feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The Queen Mary is more than a haunted ship. She's a timeline made manifest in steel and wood, where past and present exist simultaneously. Every era of her existence continues aboard her decks. The luxury passengers still dance in the salon, the wartime troops still crowd her corridors, and the children still play in empty pools. She has witnessed humanity at its most elegant and its most desperate. She has carried lovers to new lives and soldiers to their deaths. She has been a symbol of luxury, a weapon of war, and now a bridge between the living and the dead. Perhaps the Queen Mary's greatest tragedy is not the deaths that occurred aboard her, but that her voyage was never meant to end. She was built to sail forever across the Atlantic, connecting continents and cultures. Instead, she sits anchored in Long Beach, a magnificent ship forever landlocked, dreaming of the open ocean. So, the next time you visit Long Beach and see that gray hull gleaming in the California sun, remember, you're not just looking at a museum or a hotel. You're looking at one of the most haunted places in America, where 150 souls continue their eternal voyage, waiting for passengers who will never disembark. Welcome aboard the Queen Mary. Your cabin is ready, and you may never want to leave.